Like, there's so much in the way of good horror at the moment in video games, as opposed to, I mean, don't get me wrong, there is some good stuff happening in cinema nowadays as well, at long last, like after the longest bloody slump imaginable, right?
Yeah.
There is some good stuff. It's rare, but it is happening. It is out there, right? But video games, like, the indie scene, like, for horror is incredible.
Well, yeah, me and Jen watched your playthroughs of Visage and
Yeah, that one. Jesus.
Layers of Fear 1 and 2.
Oh god! Oh, so like the nastiest ones I've ever played.
Yeah, we were hooked on them.
The
They're going, oh, there's a new Layers of Fear, brilliant.
Friggin' horrible game. They're brilliant. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're amazing. Those games are. I've never really experienced anything like them.
Yeah, it was something. It was different. It was really different because we were trying to work out, especially with our Layers of Fear 2, exactly how this whole thing tied together, and we thought maybe it was it tied into the first one somehow. Like,
that's what I was thinking. You know,
the little girl is it
his
the
daughter? Yes,
it kind of not so subtly suggested that's where it was going.
Kind of, it did. I you know, I think it was sort of like a red herring, wasn't it? You know,
massively, because when it did happen, me and Jen went, "Oh fuck, we thought we had that."
Yeah.
Sussed.
Yeah, I think that was very deliberate. I think the game did that very, very deliberately indeed. But it's the kind of horror that can only occur in video games, yeah?
Yeah.
You could not translate that into a film or even into a written story. It just wouldn't work. Those mediums are too static. That the thing that got me in Layers of Fear, you know what the core of the fear is in Layers of Fear? It's the fact that you just don't know what the fuck is going to happen. Like, it makes you afraid to turn around.
Yeah, because I'm assuming all the encounters are entirely randomized.
Yeah, a lot of them are. Yeah.
So that some of them might be scripted when you find a certain item or you go in a certain room. Some of them might be programmed to kick off a certain point.
Well, I didn't know. I had to read this later on, but someone commented and said, "You do know you only got like 1 out of like 12 endings, right?"
Oh Jesus!
And I was like, "What?"
So is that on Layers of Fear 1?
Layers of Fear 1, yeah. Apparently, the game is really complex. So what it does is it keeps this weird tally of what you're looking at.
Right.
What you pick up and what you read. So, like, you know, the rats, the drawings of rats and things become an obsession. If you only follow those, you get a very, very, very particular ending.
Right.
It's if you follow the stuff that relates to the child exclusively, you get a very, 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 very particular ending.
How do you go about coding something like that? That's fucking weird.
And also like a tiny little indie studio.
Yeah, exactly. That the polish on that game looked like it could have come from a major developer.
Oh god, yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? I mean, it is absolutely. But have you seen recently? There's a lot of like very little studios that are trying to demonstrate that you don't need like the $1 billion budget. You don't need the studio of like, you know.
Yeah, but it's evident that it works because like sort of EA will forever have a particularly bad rep amongst their target demographic.
Yeah.
Bethesda seems to be going out of their way to top that.
Jesus Christ, Bethesda. I mean, did you were you as hooked as I was to the whole Fallout 76 thing?
I to a point, and then I just thought to myself, I would have dearly loved to have seen maybe a cross-platform or a multiplayer version of Fallout, and then it occurred to me, the actual story of Fallout doesn't lend itself to a multiplayer environment.
Doesn't, does it? I mean,
I would love to be able to, like, sort of the base mechanics of Fallout 4 and things that you can do there. I think to myself, me and Dave or me and whoever, we could build like a fantastic thing in Fallout 4. And I think to myself, actually, no, I don't think it necessarily works.
It's such a sad thing, isn't it? I mean, the only thing about Fallout 76 I enjoyed was ironically the Fallout. It was the scandal after scandal after scandal after scandal, and it just kept going. There was a brief period.
Didn't stop. And I'm very fucking surprised how any of them still had a job at the end of that, especially
I know,
what's his name, Cunt or whatever his name is.
Oh yeah, the CEO Todd. I can't remember his name, but
We'll just call him Todd Cunt.
yeah, that'll do.
How he still had a job at the end of it? It's almost the same, but not necessarily, because this one actually did redeem itself. Like the level of bullshit they threw behind No Man's Sky.
Very much so. Very much. I mean, at the very least,
that guy believed it.
He did, and the people behind Fallout Sky, at the very least, No Man's Sky, Fallout Sky, God, that was a Freudian slip, wasn't it?
Yeah.
At the very least, they've gone back and they've made good on their promises. I mean, the game now is spectacular. If you go into it now, it's unrecognizable as the game it was that was released. It is totally unrecognizable, and there's so much stuff in it. I mean, it is like an infinite game now. You can do anything in it. I don't know. I have no idea, but it is very cool.
I think all that the big companies have demonstrated, because I'm gonna really show my fucking age here, and I'm sure we talked about it before, right?
We're going to be talking about Resident Evil, so it's fine, like the original, point, yeah. Right? You know, so it's fine. We're going to show our age anyway, so.
Right. Back in my day, right? On like
back in my day,
things like that. when a game was put out for general release, right? The game was finished. It was tested. It was programmed. It was blah blah, and it was finished. Sort of, however much money they throw at a game these days, blah blah blah. Let's look at Cyberpunk 2077 for some reason. No Man's Sky, Fallout 76, Battlefield 2042, which everyone was really looking forward to.
Yeah.
Any fucking Call of Duty you want, doesn't matter. All it demonstrates is no matter how much money they throw at these, they are never ready for when they're supposed to be ready. They need to then release day one fucking patches to fix all the shit that they didn't get around to in the 3 years it took them to make the fucking game.
Right. And then, you know what's really, what really shows them up are the companies that do it well, which are rare, right? So those companies who are in the mainstream, they are accounted as one of the big guys, you know, but they release games consistently that are A, a million times more ambitious than any of these companies, B, are better. They're just better technically, and they are finished on release. The best example I can think of, the best example lately is Elden Ring, right? From Software.
Yeah.
It makes Bethesda, it makes anyone who's tried to do an open world game or proclaim that they've tried to make an open world game look like the laziest hacks imaginable.
It's basically independent people show that they can actually put a game out and it's finished. Right, you might have downloadable content after, they might do a few updates or whatever, but essentially the core game is done and it's out there, and they've spent maybe a tenth, maybe not even that, 2% of the budget that I don't know, EA spent on whatever load of shit they cooked up last year.
And don't get me wrong, I mean, like, you know, if a small studio game or even like an independent game is buggy or is slightly ropey, you can kind of forgive certain aspects, can't you? Because they're a small studio. It's fine, I mean, you know.
Look at the Fun Pimps and 7 Days to Die.
Right. Or one of my favourites, Pathologic 2. I mean, it's a buggy mess. It is, but
7 Days to Die came out and has been in alpha since it was released.
Of course,
I picked up the console version back in 2016. And they stopped updating the console version 4 years ago.
Right.
Because the people who were hired to port it over to console, which was Telltale, went fucking bust suddenly and very publicly.
Yeah, they did.
So the God, lost the rights to their own game for console, so they spent ages going through the course to get it back. In the meantime, they've pretty much abandoned all the console players and said, we're not going to update the game for console until the game hits gold on PC. Then we'll have the people and the money ready to port it over to console. But by then it'll be on the next generation console, and it will be in line with what I'm playing at the moment. The one that I'm playing on the PC at the moment is 5 or 6 versions ahead of the console version. And it's a completely rebuilt game. A lot of the mechanics are still there, but there's like whole new stuff you can do that you couldn't do on console. So I had to basically relearn the fucking game. When I did Series 2 of 7 Days, Dave jumped in, I had to learn how to replay the fucking game.
Because so much has changed, right?
So much has changed, but so much is still... the buildings, like points of interest, POIs have changed. Icons for like items have changed. This changed, that changed. Yeah, it's a totally different fucking game.
I mean, that's the kind of update I can get behind. You know, when they are constantly improving and building and adding things in, I can get
but
that.
The worst fucking people are the people who play it. Constantly fucking criticizing. Oh, the new version, 20.4, that took over from 20.3, has got bugs in it. Well, yeah, of course it has.
Well, yeah, they're all going to have bugs, you know. As long as it's better than the previous one, it doesn't matter, does it? You know,
just you bought the game. I bought the game for like fucking, I don't know, under 20 quid on console, right? I still play the console version now because I'll always be a console boy. I bought the PC version for £7 fucking six.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sorry, as far as I'm concerned, I don't care if it's.
I was going to say.
I mean, at the end of Series 2 on 7 days, we fucked it because I changed all the settings and brought on a Nightmare Horde, and by the end of it, the base has disappeared and Dave is sinking through the floor on a motorcycle. So we've obviously done something to it, but as far as I'm concerned, the game has paid for itself 10 times over. I'm now on Series 3 of 7 days. We've recorded 29 episodes.
Right, for £7. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
you can't really complain about that, can you, to be honest? No. It's why, you know, I'm very impressed. I mean, you won't find me, you know, lefty arse that I am. You won't find me singing the praises of companies very often. And I know
they don't deserve it.
They don't deserve it, no. But I will say I'm very impressed with the way Sony have tried to engage with the independent scene and have sort of brought independent games into their market to make them more readily available. I think that is a good thing, you know. I mean, there's stuff on the PlayStation Store for your PlayStation 4 and 5 that most people would never have accessed or seen if it were not for that. And I mean, stuff like Layers of Fear, you know, that's kind of an old game now on Steam, and it's also it's not one that a lot of people know about, really. It's a bit of an obscurity. Things like Visage, you know, which again is really obscure.
Maybe it's better that way, though. I mean, because if a game then gets a massive following or something, maybe it'll always remain constant, but if it gets a massive following, then the company, the studio get it in their heads, all right, now we've got the money to play with, blah, 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 why don't we do a grandiose version of it, and then they invariably go ahead and fuck that up.
Oh yeah, the Bethesda effect, effectively.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, one game that I loved on the PS3, so I've advanced a little bit right from the Mega Drive. One version I loved on the PS3 was Dead Space.
Oh my God, Dead Space! Why is that not available?
Right, they're remaking it.
I can't. If it, you know, fingers crossed, fingers crossed.
You know, I've not got that far into the Resident Evil 2 remake, but me and Jen again watched your series on that religiously, and
so basically, like, me just shrieking,
and do it well.
You know, shrieking every time Mr. X turned up. That was my experience of Resi 2. I loved it.
Yeah, so that brings us very, very, very neatly into the Resident Evil conversation that we're supposed to be having.
It kind of does. I mean, like, I mean, but Dead Space, fuck. I mean, it's been Dead Space. I found to be curious by its absence. You know, from things like the PS Store, for example. It was such a big game. It was such a significant. I mean, you have to bear in mind that dropped in a complete drought of horror. There was nothing good in terms of horror at the time that dropped. Dead Space was it. And it was brilliant, right? I mean, Dead Space is very much an evolution of the Resident Evil sort of games anyway, isn't it? You know,
using this, I'd say, like the sort of Resident Evil 4 model in terms of like the third person, because up until Resident Evil 4, there wasn't really any over-the-shoulder third person. No. So, and now every fucking game has got that.
They are. I mean,
if you're not going in first person, the third person is like over the shoulder is an industry standard sort of.
Yep.
Fantastic. I mean,
since Resi 4, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it did. Resi 4 is an interesting one because I'm replaying it at the moment, and it's a very fun game. It's really fun. It is the point at which the Resi series jumps the shark to like the nth degree. It is so bloody silly.
It is, but I've got a soft spot.
I've got a soft spot for it too. I mean, I played it when it came out on the GameCube, or when I was at uni, and it's got like a
PS2. That was a PS2 era.
PS2. Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it? Yeah, Jesus Christ.
And I'd say the only thing that sort of holds it back really is, well, at least I'd say particularly the first third of the game is the interesting collage of various shades of brown.
Yeah, it's a very brown game, isn't it?
It's a fucking brown game.
It's a very
strangely brown
game.
in fact.
I mean, I noticed when I originally played it, but I'm really noticing it this time. It's how culturally resonant that game is. So it dropped at the height of like the invasion of Iraq, the war on terror, all of that garbage, which the whole world was very aware of. And this game, I mean, it's not any, don't get me wrong, it's no great meta commentary on it or anything like that, but it reflects it so much, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
like
it
the
is
archetypal American,
right.
corn-fed fucking American hero sort of thing.
Fighting against a religiously fanatical cult who are called a terrorist group who kidnapped the president's daughter, who are trying to spread a parasitic ideology. Yeah. You know, it's like not subtle. Member. It's not subtle. I mean, you even have the bad guy Sadler saying at various points, using the rhetoric that was used at the time. So he says stuff like, "You are Americans trying to police the world," you know, and it's like, what? This is about the war on
Team
terror.
America
right?
shit. Yeah,
it is Team America. It is this sort of white ass corn-fed, like all American super cop going into a vaguely foreign area and murdering everybody. You know, it's like, wow. And I don't know, what I can't get from the game is to what degree it is Team America World Police, to what degree it's like a parody.
That's a good question.
I don't know. I honestly don't know, because it plays it. I mean, as silly as it gets, it plays it dead straight.
Yeah, but it's not. Yeah, it does, but it's not as on the nose with it as Resident Evil 5 was.
No, right? No.
It's not far up enough its own arse. Like Resident Evil 6 was. The whole reason I got a PS3 was for Resident Evil 5.
Yeah.
I turned it off after half an hour.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, not only is it like the most misjudged thing from that era you will ever see, like this white guy gunning down hordes of black people. I mean, like, Jesus fucking Christ.
Now, Resident Evil 6, right? I thought, I've heard dubious things about it, but I'll give it a go. I turned it off after 10 minutes. Yeah. Right? And if I ever want to be reminded, if I ever think to myself, Resident Evil 5 or 6 is on the PlayStation Store, or blah, 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 I can pick those up. What I do is I put on Zero Punctuation's review of those.
That's wise. Yeah, that's wise.
And I'm politely reminded why I promptly got rid of those copies, the hard copies, as soon as I had them, right? And why I've never gone back to them.
Yeah, I mean, they were the point I jumped off the Resi series, if I'm perfectly honest. I played Resi 4, and then that was it. I didn't even bother picking up Resi 5 after seeing what was in it. You know, I was sort of like, no, I'm not interested in that. And as it turns out, it's also a shit game as well. Yeah, it's not very good, no. You know. Resi 6, I mean, is bad. It's really bad, but there are moments.
It's the opening level, and it's, I suppose by that stage the controls are more intuitive or sort of blah blah. Mm-hmm. But it's the opening level for me. I think it was you're running through a street where everything's blowing up and planes are crashing, and you've got to dodge through the traffic and zombies. Blah blah. I just thought you're trying to capture the essence of Resident Evil 2's opening intro after Leon and Claire get separated by the oil tanker. You're trying to recreate that, but you've got none of the charm.
No, none of the pacing, none of absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure it will happen. We'll get to the point where they remake those two. And if they do, let's hope they take the good elements and they make them work, because like the unfortunate thing is it's such it would have to be a totally different game. But the sad thing is, like, Resi 6 is where you find out like the end of Wesker and all of that stuff. So like the story arcs that was said, I mean, I know it's Resident Evil story arcs, but like it is where you find out like the ending of those characters, and that's so sad that it's in such a shit game.
Yeah, I mean, if they hadn't have like completely gone back like what they did with Resident Evil 4 and gone right, this is the same continuity, but now we're in a totally different scenario. If they hadn't have done that Resident Evil 7, then I guarantee you, if Resident Evil 7 had been more of the same, that's it.
That would have been it.
It would have gone the same way as Silent Hill.
Well, that would have been it. The franchise would have been over. I mean, fortunately, Capcom have just dragged it back. I mean, Resi 7 was a shock. It was a total
yeah,
shock.
I remember playing that.
It's awesome. I mean, it's such a good game, and not only is it a good game, but it introduces all this new type of horror into Resident Evil, like horror Resi isn't really known for its psychological horror, is it? It's not that kind of thing. But this introduces it. This introduces psychological horror into the Resident Evil bio and body horror ethos, and it bugger me if it doesn't work.
Yeah, while still retaining a lot of the core elements from the first, like sort of what's his name, Trevor.
George Trevor, yeah, the guy who designed.
It's wormed in there somehow.
Have you noticed, like, with the remakes and with the more recent games? I mean, George Trevor was in the original game, or rather, there was a diary entry from George Trevor in the original.
Yeah, but he wasn't. Apart from that, he wasn't. That was it.
No, that was it. His entire inclusion was a diary entry at one point in the mansion. That was it. But with the remakes and with the new games, they've really expanded, like, not only his inclusion but the Trevor family. So obviously in the remake, you've not only got that diary entry, you've also learned. You've got Lisa, exactly, and you also learn that he is the architect behind. He's the one who designs all these wacky, weird places where you've got.
But who's contracting him?
I know, right? Umbrella, apparently.
There has to be an umbrella board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so Lab 1, just outside Raccoon City, we need a security system. Anyone got any ideas?
Well, we could have retinal scans and, like, the things that normal people have. No, we don't want that. We want elaborate, weird shit involving masks, statues, gems, coloured, coded keys.
Trap plates in the fucking floor, which are motion censored.
Somebody in that meeting said, "Think more Scooby-Doo."
Yeah. I got away with it too if it wasn't for fucking Trevor.
Yeah, and you know what I love? They've dropped references to George Trevor throughout the series. So there is a journal you can find in Resi fucking 7, and it turns out George Trevor designed some of the security stuff for the Baker family as well.
But why?
I know. And also Resi 8. Resi fucking 8. Yeah. He designed some of the stuff for, like, Lady Dimitrescu's castle, and it's like, oh, this is fucking brilliant. I love it. It's Trevor has
maybe that's how he got hired. Right, let's have a look at your portfolio. Oh, you did the Dimitrescu castle, did you? Very nice, very nice.
Very nice indeed. That's very upmarket, right? A reference from Lady Dimitrescu. Wow.
How do you feel about fucking up this country mansion?
Right. And then, of course, I mean, the irony is, of course, the end of his story is the beginning. So, like, the diary entry you find in both in the original Resident Evil and in the remake is him basically saying, "Oh, I'm trapped. They've locked me in my own mansion, and I can't remember the codes, and I'm gonna die here." And that's exactly what happens. Obviously, you even find his great.
Maybe you shouldn't have hidden the fucking the key behind the fucking painting that you needed the 6-digit code to fucking get into the room in the first place, and you can only get that 6-digit code by positioning the fucking sundial at 4:30 in the afternoon. Maybe it's your fault. Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, not to mention all of the fucking, like, lethal gas traps, the spikes that come out of walls and shit like that.
He was just showing off at that point, wasn't he?
At that point, he really was. I like to think that, like, he was maybe a disgraced architect who, like, nobody else would hire but these crazy people from Umbrella.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that makes sense, isn't it? But they've even, like, woven his mythology with the remake. They wove his mythology into the mythology of the Nemesis, like Lisa Trevor, the daughter. She is proto Nemesis.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she wasn't in the first game, was she? I don't remember. She wasn't. No. Not the original.
Not in the original. No, in the very first game. No, I mean,
she is heartbreaking.
Oh, she's brilliant. I mean, she's a lot of people. You know how there's all these, like, top 10, like, Resident Evil monsters and whatnot on YouTube? She's always near the top. People love her. She's a great addition. She's a great addition to the whole series, They've even, I mean, did you play the remake of Resi 3?
No.
It's very good. I mean, I didn't really like the original Resi 3.
I did.
I just wasn't a fan of it.
I wasn't a massive fan of the original Resident Evil.
Right.
When I first played it, for a couple of reasons. All right, one, I loved the pre-rendered backgrounds. I thought they were incredible,
great,
and they always will be. I don't care how fucking old that PS1 disc is, right? Those pre-rendered backgrounds, especially the initial lobby that you go into with the staircase.
It's
amazing,
isn't it? And they've got such atmosphere, the pre-rendered backgrounds.
The things that put me off was it took me ages to get used to the camera angle thing.
Oh, the tank controls and that, the fixed camera.
The fixed camera angle to the point where I had to play it enough, and this actually helped me when I came to play Resident Evil 2, which I was very dubious of. But which helped Resident Evil 2 was memorizing exactly what you were going to see next with the next camera, would help me to preempt exactly where I was going to move my thumb on the controls to make sure instead of running off and fucking going somewhere off the screen, I was technically still running in a straight line.
Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Those tank controls, if one of the big faults of them is if you're moving off the screen and the camera angle changes, you will suddenly start moving in a different direction.
Yeah. So you need to be able to just move your thumb down to make sure you're still running when that camera changes. So trying to memorize the camera angles was one thing. Yeah. When it came to Resident Evil 2, now I remember I spent a lot of time around Dave's house when I was a teenager, when he was off on active service in the Navy, and I'd sit there with his mum until about fucking 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be playing Resident Evil 2, and she'd treat it like she was watching an interactive film. Right. She's like, "Oh, go over there. What's that over there?" And we would check every corner. We would do, and obviously because Resident Evil 2 was 2 discs, 4 scenarios. Yeah. That was entertainment made up.
That must have been so much fun. Much fun. Because, I remember when I played Resi 1 quite late on, really. It dropped in, I can't believe this, but I was doing some research. It dropped in it was 96.
96.
The original Resi dropped late 96, and it's I can't believe that.
And Resident Evil 2 was 2 years later, and then Resident Evil 3 was 1 year after.
That's right. But I played the director's cut that came in 97.
I might have, actually.
Which is, it is essentially just the same game, but it's got all the stuff because of course it was heavily censored in the UK, or a lot in the original game. A lot of the gory stuff was cut out.
Yeah, like Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, very like Mortal Kombat. So, and not much. It's just it's stuff like the opening cinematic. You get to see a lot more. You get to see one of the STARS members getting mauled by the bloody dogs, and the dogs with one of its eyes hanging out, and all that garbage, And there's lots more blood in it. There's just lots more blood in it. But I remember that it was a revolution. Resident Evil was a complete revolution. There were horror games before that, the British microcomputers, for example. There were horror games on them, but they were very few and far between. And they were just, obviously, because of technical limitations, because video games were in their infancy at the time, they were just not the same. Exactly. They were just not the same. Resident Evil came along, and I was thinking about this as well. This was in the pre-internet days. The internet existed, but nobody had it at home. No. It wasn't like it is now, the ubiquitous hive mind to which we're all connected.
Quite so
yeah, I know, right? So it spread by word of mouth. It wasn't like it wasn't like now where every fucker knows it.
Reviewing game magazines.
That and the playground, school corridors. I remember when it hit, people at school going nuts.
I remember when Resident Evil 3 came out, and I scoured high and low to find the Resident Evil 3 walkthrough magazine. Because not because I wanted to see how to cheat the game. I just wanted to see all the screenshots that they're taken of various things. Because out of the three of them, I say Resident Evil 2 is my favourite for simply how much further they took the whole thing.
Yeah, God Almighty.
But Resident Evil 3 is, I'd place higher than Resident Evil 1 in terms of the original games, because it sort of reused quite a lot of things like the RPD and things like that.
Do you know why that is? Do you know why?
Yeah, I know. It's because it was originally supposed to be additional content, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah, it was supposed to. That's right. It was
Code Veronica was supposed to be Resident Evil 4.
Exactly that. Code Veronica was supposed to be Resi 3, and what became Resi 3 was going to be an add-on for Resi 2. It was going to be an extra mission, but Capcom realized that they had a gap. One of the Christmases, it would have been like Christmas '99, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
For Resi 3, there was a schedule gap, and they needed something out, so they cobbled together Resi 3, and it turned out to be. I mean, most people, it is one of their favourites of the original 3. Most people remember it very fondly.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, if you played it on like sort of normal or easy, then you were overpowered from the outset, which pissed me off. But what I liked was you got to see a bit of Raccoon City in Resident Evil 2 while you're trying to get to the RPD. Not a lot, but just enough. But Resident Evil 3, you get to go to all sorts of fucking places. Yeah. You get to go to the park. You get to go to the graveyard where you've got that massive cockworm with teeth.
The worm, yeah.
You get to go to the reporter's office just around the corner where the smashed fire engine is.
Yep.
Near to the game, where you've got the boutique where you can change your clothes if you've completed the game a certain number of times. And just, it's always made me laugh. Like, sort of, I love, again, the pre-rendered backgrounds and everything like that, the carnage, the destruction, the smashed police car just on the corner of the road where you've got, I think, a knocked over trash can, like some paper on the floor. And so they ticked all the boxes in terms of, like, apocalypse scenery, right?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Because it's like,
at that point, traffic cones and sort of thing like that. But if you notice how these roads are actually so thin, how the fuck would a police car got down there in the first place?
Yeah, I know, right?
You come from an alleyway into a essentially what amounts to a pavement, and that leads down into the bottom corner to a locked fucking iron door. There's nowhere for this fucking car to go.
Yeah, it's one of those areas where, like, it's betraying its video game nature, isn't it?
It really is.
I was thinking about this as well, like, when I first played the original Resident Evil, I mean, I know it sounds strange now, given how crude it is and how video gamey it actually is, you know, with all of the weird keys and all of that, but... Thinking about it, when I played it at the time, I think I must have been like 14, 15. It was the first time ever I'd come across a video game environment that felt in any way real to me and not like a video game environment. So not like a level system or whatever. You did feel like within the self-contained universe of Resident Evil, this mansion makes sense, right?
Yeah,
as this evil bio lab, it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you have your periodic sort of what I guess what you could call end stage bosses or mid stage bosses, or rather certain points you have to get past. But it's not like a platformer where you've got to get to the end and you go to level 2. There's also as well the first game that I can think of really. Outside of GTA 3, for example, which was PlayStation 2. So yeah, PlayStation 1. First games that I could think of that actually had a running narrative through it that didn't rely on just basically follow the game mechanics, get to A to B, and then progress. There was
absolutely, yeah.
Something else. It doesn't matter that the story was shit and the acting was fucking cobbled together in one afternoon after a crack binge. It's
legendary.
fucking dreadful is what it was.
It is. It's so bad, but fun as hell, right?
I mean, at least they did try on Resident Evil 3. And Resident Evil
tried.
3.
I mean,
it stepped up a bit, but I mean, even so.
I mean, that was the era. I mean, again, we're talking 1996. So, like, this was the time when acting in video games was new. It was a new concept, right? So they literally did a lot of the time just got the office temps in to do. Yeah,
I was going to say anyone who wasn't unionized, I bet you anything you like.
Any money. Oh, can you just come and like speak into this microphone, please? Just say this line. It doesn't matter how you say it. Just say this line. Yeah.
The best one for me is. the fucking dramatic pauses where you can tell the game's trying to load up the next sentence, next sequence. Where's Jill?
Stop it. Don't open that door.
I'll go and look for her. It's like, well, do you know, in the time it took you two to say those two lines, I've made a cup of tea and had a cigarette. Yeah. I've left the room twice.
Like, if you play Jill's scenario, Barry obviously is always trying to skirt around. Like, and his excuse is for trying to stay in the same room or whatnot, or for why they should separate, are so funny because they're such bullshit. You know, I'll be examining this blood. It's like, well, why?
I hope this isn't
Chris's blood. It's like
it's the one that gets me every time. And I thought to myself, wow, do you know that guy? Bless him. Whoever recorded that line, was really sincere about it.
Bravo. You know, give the man an Oscar.
You really put your all into that, and it was still dog shit.
What I love about the remakes is because they know people love the hammy acting, they've just tried to hit a balance where it's better it is like compared to the original Resi games, the acting in the remakes is like it's sublime.
Shakespearean.
Yeah. It's Shakespearean, yeah. But what they've done, they've hit that very clever median point where it feels like B-movie acting, but it works. It's much better. It's much more sincere and
that's all Resident Evil ever really was. I mean, I got the B-movie vibe from Resident Evil 2 more than the other entries in the original trilogy. It kind it felt more schlocky. It felt a little bit more. Whereas Resident Evil 3 kind of felt like they were trying to. I think it didn't. I personally love it, but I think it didn't work for a number of reasons. One, they were trying to please too many people at once, whilst also trying to throw in like sort of their own personal references. Like, oh, okay, so we'll have the stalkiness of the Terminator with an average look of Freddy Krueger, but we'll also have a bit of Tremors in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think what didn't work for me. I mean, for one thing, I think at that point I was kind of moving away from survival horror anyway. You know, I was sort of moving into.
Well, wasn't it?
It was rushed. It was rushed, and I was sort of moving into like the more like really dark and serious horror that you were getting on the PC at the time, stuff like System Shock 2 and that kind of thing. And I think that kind of drew me away from it. But also, I just didn't like the Nemesis, like the design of him. I didn't like it. I thought it was a bit silly and a bit hokey. You know what he looked like to me? You know the Goombas from Mario?
Yeah.
He looked like one of them in a trench coat.
I was going to say like a burnt sausage. You know,
yeah. Have you seen what he looks like in the remake?
I have. He's got
fucking amazing. He's like a Cenobite.
I guess it's a bit silly to say, but it looks like he has more texture to it. But then again, you're talking about a resolution that's far higher than anything the PS1 could have knocked out.
But they've also very subtly redesigned him so that he doesn't look like a green mutant thing. He looks tortured. He looks like surgery has been done to him, you know? Yeah. Which, of course, we find out it has. I mean, you get in the remake, you get a lot more about how the Nemesis was made and not who he was. You never find out like who the guy was who was implanted. Oh God, that would have been great. That would have been hilarious if he's still wandering around after all this time. Yeah. But you do get. He looks like I say, like a Cenobite. He's got stitches and scar.
Yes, that's exactly what we said. He had that sort of like not quite real quality, like sort of almost otherworldly element to him.
And he's so fluid in the remake as well. Like when he's around, he's leaping from building to building, and he's dropping down in front of you in alleyways. And I said, "Oh my God, he's so."
Yeah, but I think you'll find that those are actually scripted as well.
Oh yeah, they probably are. I've no doubt.
I think the times that he does show up, they are, but they don't feel as shoehorned in as the PS1. Like, I mean, for example, in the police station where he jumps through that window.
Yeah.
With the rocket launcher.
Yeah. That was the other thing. The rocket launcher. I'm kind of like, why is the super zombie got a rocket launcher?
Well, I think the question you really should be asking is, why not?
Why not? I suppose. What they do with him in the remake is that they make him much more like a classic Resi monster, like the big Resi monster. So he does go full Lovecraftian at the end.
Yeah.
Well, like the big version of Nemesis at the very end is a like.
It's not quite the same as the ones you get in the one for PS4 was the remake one for PS3. Actually, I'd say followed the original PS2 William Birkin thing right at the end.
Yeah.
So they leaned more into the teeth and the tentacles and the copious amounts of slime and everything like that. Whereas the PS1 version, he turns into like a pair of scissors at the end, doesn't he, or something like that?
Yeah, it is different. I mean, like they take liberties with all the remakes. You know, they've changed things, they've chopped things, they've sort of reorganized things a little bit. Resi 1 is the closest. Although there's lots added on, it follows broadly the same strokes. Resi 2, there's a little bit more difference. Resi 3 is very different, I would say. There's a lot of sections in the Resi 3 remake that are basically they just do away with a lot of the original game, like the clock tower just isn't in it. You know,
I've not played the original Resident Evil 3 for many years, but somehow it's very much etched into my mind. and I was paying particular attention to your playthrough about what could possibly be different and how they've scripted it, how certain things play out. And yeah, there were massive sections where I was like, okay, so we're going to come up to this bit now. Oh shit, it's not there.
Yeah, like the graveyard isn't there with the big
Graveyard
worm.
isn't there.
Isn't
the
there?
hospital scene is totally different.
Yep. Yeah, well, you play as Carlos now, don't you? And it's like, it's a very different sequence, that one. They've turned it into like a classic sort of like George Romero zombie movie siege scene.
Yeah, but it goes on too long.
It's way too long. I mean, one thing that I think of all the remakes, the third one is the weakest, definitely.
Yeah, but I mean, trouble is, but the original Resident Evil,
right?
The third one was. I'll be willing to admit the third one was the weakest one, even though I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally.
So I guess your third entry is probably going to be the weakest. Of the remake trilogy, if its source material wasn't really up to par to begin with.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong, I actually really had a blast with the Resident Evil 3 remake. I really enjoyed it. What I like about it is that it is the shortest, it is the simplest of the remakes, and without a shadow of a doubt, it's very linear. There's not really much in the way of exploration in it outside of very narrow parameters. But I kind of liked that. I thought it was a nice sort of a fresher take on Resident Evil, and it
but I kind of felt like the original Resident Evil 3 actually let you explore more of Raccoon City than the remake did.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely
and that's true. Actually, I'll say that's something that kind of disappointed me, because I thought they were going to use a baseline similar map.
But they don't.
They don't.
It's so very different.
And then you go out and you sort of like you start to run away. I was like, okay, I don't recognise any of this at all.
Right.
And I thought to myself, well, why would you think you would recognise any of it at all? It's a remake, you fucking idiot. It's not. Almost like a reimagining to a degree.
More so than any of the other remakes. That's definitely true. I mean, like the other two. I mean, there's a lot of new stuff added in, but it is stuff added in. All of the original stuff is still there in one way, shape, or form, but it's just exaggerated and there's more bits to it. Resi 3 stuff it's like much more Frankensteinian. So stuff has been chopped out, stuff has been changed around, some of it is gone entirely. They've tried to tie it much more closely to the running narrative of the games, even to the point whereby they've there's a note you can find about the development of the Nemesis, and it talks about how the Nemesis is a tyrant zombie that has both the G virus from William Birkin and a Las Plagas parasite in it from
that would certainly explain the tentacles.
Exactly.
Anyway.
And the fact that he can I don't think he did this in the original game, but in the remake, there's a point where you see him picking up the dead zombies, and the tentacle goes down their throats, and he changes them. He implants a parasite.
Yeah, he didn't do that in the original.
It's kind of cool. It is.
The only time he had anything like that was where he kills Brad Vickers in the original.
Yeah, which of course in the remake, Brad doesn't die that way.
No. But I did quite like that in the original Resident Evil, because I thought that's kind of harsh.
It's what Brad fucking deserves, isn't it?
More than what he deserves. I was like Resident Evil 2's remake, for example, paid far more close attention to its environment. So the police station, with the exception of maybe a little bit of set dressing, especially when you go into the main lobby through the front doors, apart from a little bit of set dressing, it's almost entirely identical from what I remember. In fact, the map and the directions where you go and everything, the layout is almost exactly the same as the original PS1 version. So you're going right. So that scene where you have to open up the shutter and you're crawling breathing in the blood and you've got the torch. So I was thinking, you're going to go through a door there, but it's a shutter now. So subtle changes like that. But I thought to myself, okay, I think if you go through that door, don't you have a door just on the other side that leads you through into the office where Leon's desk was supposed to be? But the layout is almost exactly the same.
Yeah, they've just all they've done
with Resident Evil 3, the environment is fucking balls to the wall, anything they want.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it looks like. And I imagine they're going to be doing it more and more and more as the remakes go on. I mean, the next remake is apparently Resi 4. That's the scuttlebutt.
I was expecting them to do Code Veronica.
I would have thought that, because Code Veronica is narratively the next one.
Next one in the sequels.
Because it's where you find out,
because there's a lot about the it's not the Spencer family, is it? Is it?
Yeah, Spencer family. That's right.
Spencer
Yeah,
family.
the ones who founded Umbrella, and it's the Spencer family.
There was a lot of I mean, I remember playing Code Veronica initially being a little bit underwhelmed by the first sort of 10 minutes, because I felt like it was a redressing of Resident Evil 2's initial opening sort of escape thing. But as that story went on, I was like, actually, do you know what? This is actually kind of fucking good.
It gets going, doesn't it? And when you start to get into the story elements of the Spencer family, and you find out they're the ones behind Umbrella, and they're like, this Umbrella is more than the company it appears to be. It's like this ancient tradition from centuries back, and so on and so forth. And when you start to find out where the virus comes from, of course, in Code Veronica, the fact that it's from these primordial flowers, it's so interesting. And also it's also where you learn a bit more about Wesker, of course. It's where you find out that Wesker's still alive, and that he is actually this bioweapon, like this perfected bioweapon.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool, because it sets him up as the recurrent villain,
Yeah, I mean, they could do it. They could do a lot with it. I'd as much as I would like to see a remake of Resident Evil 4, I think to myself, is it too soon? But then it occurs to me, probably not. Because that came out in 2004.
It's about that. Yeah, it would have been.
The game's almost fucking 20 years old already.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I mean, I was thinking about it earlier, and it's like thinking, because again, this is us aging ourselves dramatically.
Oh, fuck yes, go on.
But thinking about the original Resident Evil and Resi 2 and Resi 3 when they dropped in the mid to late 90s, the landscape of culture and everything was just completely different, completely different.
Yeah, well, I lived in the South End at the time, so there wasn't much culture.
No, right. Well, I lived in fucking Tamworth, so I still do. But but yeah, it was a different world at that point, and it's very difficult to express to people the transitions that have happened since. So, Resi 4. Yeah, I like playing it now, replaying it now. It's amazing, what a signifier of a different world it is. As I was saying earlier, the politics of it, the underlying politics, the cultural touchstones and references that it has, are from a world that has very much moved on, completely changed.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to dearly love to play my original Resident Evil trilogy. The problem is I don't have a CRT TV.
You wouldn't. Right? Have you tried playing?
No, I would. I really would. Wow. I don't have a CRT, right? We've got I don't know, whatever LCD fucking 40-inch screen TVs, right? I can only just about play Worms from 1995 on the bedroom TV, right? And after an hour or so, it hurts my eyes. Yeah. I have actually been looking, because your playthroughs and that we will watch those, right? And I was like, I really wouldn't mind doing a playthrough of the original Resident Evil.
The very first Resi, yeah.
But I'm starting to think the only way I'm going to be able to do that on my laptop, because that's how I'm going to do the recording. Because fuck if I'm trying to get a capture card or a memory or whatever the fuck they are for my PS2, right? That's not happening.
I have got one for when I do PC games, and it's very cool. It is very cool because you can basically capture anything, If you can figure out how to wire the fuckers up, you can capture anything. But I'm telling you now, it is a ball ache.
Yeah, and I'm a man with a limited amount of time on this earth, right?
Right.
I'm slowly exacerbating that. But I'm thinking to myself, I've been trying to find copies. I looked on Steam, nothing on there. I looked on Good Old Games, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Nothing on there. I'm trying to find the original Resident Evil trilogy, or at least 2 or 3. I'm thinking I might actually have to try and find a PS1 emulator, and that worries me a little bit because I don't have much experience with emulators, and I'm always worried that they're going to fuck my system 6 ways to Sunday.
As long as you get a reputable one, you'll be all right. The problem with emulators...
How do you know? How would you possibly know what's reputable and what's not?
Right, that's it, because it is, it's technically illegal, but But the problem I find with emulators is setting them up, getting them to work, because they, especially with the complicated systems, like the PlayStation and so on and so forth. The SNES emulators and the Mega Drive emulators are very easy. They're very user friendly these days. But the PlayStation, N64, they're a bit more complicated and quite difficult to get working.
Yeah, I mean, my gaming laptop is a bit of a beast, bless it, and.
To be, these days, like a non-gaming laptop would be able to run Resident Evil. I think most people's phones would be able to run Resident Evil at top.
Yeah, but it's finding an emulator that I'm willing to actually try and install. I don't think I'm being stupid. I don't think for one serious minute that I downloaded a Resident Evil 3 emulator and my computer has a stroke. Right? I don't think that's likely at all. What I'm worried about is downloading an emulator that's got a coding bug in it or something,
a virus or malware or something. Yeah, that's it's a legitimate worry. It's a legitimate worry. As I say, as long as you get as long as you research what the best ones are, the most reputable ones are, you should be all right. So, I mean, I haven't done it for a long time, but like the Super Nintendo one I used to use was the ZSNES, and that's brilliant. That is absolutely, it's a top-notch emulator. That is, it is absolutely stunning. But PlayStation, I'm not sure what the best of the PlayStation 1 emulators is.
Yeah, I might have to do some research, because I do want to go back and play these old games again. I wouldn't mind trying to do a recording on Resident Evil 3's original game. I wouldn't mind going back and doing a stupid recording of fucking Worms or something like that.
You know what? If you did Resident Evil 3, that would probably be really popular, because there are loads of Let's Plays of the original Resi 1 and Resi 2. There are not many Let's Plays of Resi 3, the original one.
Yeah.
There are not.
I guess it's trying to find a decent emulator. Maybe one doesn't exist.
Maybe so. It's very niche for some reason. I don't know why, but it is very niche. Code Veronica is the same. Code Veronica, very difficult to find a Let's Play of Code Veronica all the way through. And certainly one that's of any decent quality.
Yeah, I think without games like the original Resident Evil trilogy, you wouldn't have stuff like Dead Space.
Well, no, absolutely.
And you wouldn't have like Silent Hill. I'd argue Silent Hill, that they kind of came out about the same time. I don't think one necessarily.
Well, actually, Silent Hill was created on the back of Resident Evil. So basically, basically Konami, like the team, what became Team Silent, which is where the name comes from, they were just told, look, this game from Capcom is killing us. It's doing gangbusters. It is effectively created an entirely new genre, which it did. I mean, I know, by the way, before people start tapping away, oh, what about Alone in the Dark? But I know it wasn't the first survival horror, all right? I know, I get it. But it was the one that made the genre what it is, It's the one that established survival horror as one of the principal genres of video gaming, right? Yeah. And Konami were like, the uppers of Konami were like, you've got to make one. Make us a horror game.
I thought they pretty much just by coincidence came out about the same time.
No, Silent Hill was quite a bit later, actually. But the thing is, the people behind Silent Hill, they didn't want to just make like Konami's version of Resident Evil. They wanted to create something different, something. Their attitude was, they want a horror game. We're going to give them something that they've never seen before, and boy, did they do it. I mean, Silent Hill, Resi, I will love to my dying day. It was the one that kind of opened my eyes to what video games can do in terms of horror. It was one of the very first video games to genuinely freak me out, and that that atmosphere. When in Resi 1 where you go down into the basement underneath the mansion for the first time, you've got that weird music with the water dripping, where the Neptunes are.
Is that where the
sharks are? Where the Neptunes
the cutscene comes in, where the ladder, and then the ladder, and then tap when you're going down the ladder.
Yeah, it's so scary. That is, I will remember experiencing that for the first time until my dying day, because it was so frightening. Silent Hill is of a horror that is so far beyond Resident Evil. It's untrue.
Yeah, but it worked. It made itself work for us, because there was also the technical limitations as well. So they went, fuck it, we'll just have everything blanketed in fog. Fuck it, who cares?
Silent Hill is like
That was genius.
It's horror video gaming growing up, basically. Like Resi horror, they're different types of horror, despite their technical similarities. You know, Resi has always been B-movie horror. It's like referential cinematic horror.
Yeah.
Silent Hill is it's its own kind of horror, and B, it's psychological. It's much more disturbing than jump scares and gross out horror.
Although it did have quite a few of those. I enjoyed, again, Silent Hill 1, not a massive fan. Silent Hill 2 I very much enjoyed. Silent Hill 3 for me.
Yeah, most people say 2. I like 3 best.
Silent Hill 3 for me, right? So the initial opening scene where you're in the shopping mall,
so
and everything starts going a bit fucking weird. Great. The one thing that fucking freaked me the hell out was when you're in the hospital and everything's fine, and you go through a door, and then the next thing is you can't see 6 inches in front of your face.
Yeah.
All you've got is your character model there, covered by shadowed by a tiny little bit of red around you to simulate the floor and the walls, and everything else is black. I just went, nope.
Yeah. There are so many little set pieces like that in Silent Hill 3. There's a bit in the hospital where if you go into a room, there's a mirror, and there's like, that is so scary.
With the veins and the blood. Yeah, and I think depending on how many times you go into that room, where you've got your reflection in the mirror, will determine how many versions of you attack you on that carousel.
Right, so it's almost
because I had about 20 of the fuckers.
Oh, so it's almost like it's cloning you or something. Like I think so. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But it was just like it's so disturbing. It's so weird, and Silent Hill 3 is full of that stuff.
Then I played Silent Hill: The Room. I don't think I completed that one. I might still have it. I never completed it, even though I really appreciated the premise of it.
Yeah, it was a cool piece of work. The Room.
It kind of felt like that again would have been maybe DLC if it was in the DLC stage.
Well, originally it wasn't a Silent Hill game. It was a game in and of itself, yeah. And then they slapped the Silent Hill sort of boat.
Okay.
Yeah.
What came after that? It was then transferred to PS3.
It would have been after that. It would have been Homecoming. Yeah, which
so the opening level of that is you're in the morgue.
That's it. That's the one.
Again, I turned it off after 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know why. I just went no.
It's got good elements if you can get past the atrocious controls. If you can get past the combat, which is annoying and shouldn't be in a Silent Hill game, it's got some good elements. Like the boss creatures, the big monsters, are disturbing and terrifying as hell in Homecoming, and it's got a fairly decent story as well. It's just it's got so many elements that are not Silent Hill. The emphasis on combat. Why in a Silent Hill game? The thing about Silent Hill, one of the things that differentiates it from like games like Resident Evil, is you don't fight, you run away.
Yeah, but I mean, you had that element in Resident Evil as well. Resident Evil 5, where they put more emphasis on combat because of how well Resident Evil 4 did. So
yes.
There is you can't really blame them for saying, well, look, here's a progression from like sort of these mechanics seem to. I mean, the game sold really well. We're assuming it's these mechanics that did it. No, not necessarily, because Resident Evil 4's mechanics. One thing I fucking hated was the knife fight with Krauser, where every 25 seconds you had to do a quick time event. That
has been the bane of my playthrough this time round. I forgot about the fucking quick time events.
They are dreadful. So maybe certain game mechanics they think is what drives it forward, is what people really want to see. Not necessarily. I never bothered playing Silent Hill Downpour.
No, it was dreadful.
I just had so much outright immediate negativity towards it. I thought to myself, you'll probably save me a fucking 20 quid then.
It's such a shame because, like, Silent Hill, there are potentially infinite stories to tell, but just because of the nature of the mythology, right?
Yeah. But if you look at the two franchises, Silent Hill and Resident Evil, I'd say probably Silent Hill as the one that's got far more fucking questionable entries to its name.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, it's definitely true. There are three good. No, I mean, to be fair, there are three very good Silent Hill games, 1, 2, and 3. There's one okay Silent Hill game, which is Origins. It's all right. There's that remake of the original game for the Wii U, I think it was, called Shattered Memories, which was quite good, a slightly different take on Silent Hill. And then if you count it, there's PT, which is fucking amazing.
Could have been amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like, even what exists is incredible. But Konami being Konami and Konami being shit, you know.
Well, yeah.
It's such
they slapped the name on fucking
pachinko machines.
Yeah. All right, why not? We might as well do that.
There is a glimmer of hope. Sony have been going hard for about 4 years now, trying to get the Silent Hill license from Konami.
Right, okay.
Because what they want to do is work with Hideo Kojima, the creator of Silent Hill.
Sony?
Yeah, to create another...
Just fucking let them do it.
Just let them do it. I mean, Konami are just sitting on the franchise.
Konami would probably earn far more if they sold the license and the rights to it than they would out of fucking like one-off banding machines and fucking...
But then again, have you seen the franchises, like the bits of video game history that Konami are just squatting on and not doing anything with? Contra, one of the big classic games from the 16-bit era, which we call Pro Protector over here for some reason. Castlevania. I mean, for fuck's sake, Castlevania, one of the archetypal video game franchises, you know? Yeah. You know, Metroidvania games are so popular now. They're so popular because Konami refused to produce any more of them. The indie scene have picked it up, and look at what's happening in the indie scene. They're absolutely thriving. Yeah. You know?
So if they don't want these, if they don't want to do anything with these licenses, let them go. Make the money back on them.
Yeah, at least, you know.
As long as it's not EA.
Yeah, as long as it's not fucking EA. But, like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Silent Hill, like, PT sold PS4s, right? People bought PS4s on the promise of a new next-gen Silent Hill game.
Yeah.
And, of course, it didn't happen. And, you know, the worst of it, it's reading, like, the glimmers and rumors of what Silent Hills was going to be. It's like, oh, you wankers, you bastards, I can't believe you cancelled this. Apparently, the scuttlebutt is that it was going to be more like an open world Silent Hill. So you would be able to go through different houses and buildings, and every single house, every single building would have its own story and would have its own like puzzles to solve and mysteries to uncover and horrors to unmask. I mean, that sounds
very ambitious.
Amazing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Konami, you know?
Yeah. And the cancellation of that seemed to be, again, very sort of out of the blue. It
was because they couldn't come to terms with Hideo Kojima, who created Silent Hill. They were trying to shaft him as they shaft everybody else, you know?
Yeah,
and he basically
it sounds
said...
like it's something rather than just... I guess from a consumer point of view, that sort of thing will literally come out of the blue and people go, well, what the fuck happened there?
Yeah.
But it sounds to me like that was brewing for a little while.
Oh, a long time. Yeah, a long time.
And he called their bluff and they went, right, well, fuck you then.
Yeah, he was litigating for a long time because they were underpaying him for what he was doing, basically. And, of course, he went off and made Death Stranding.
Death Stranding, yeah, which apparently the prequel is in the works for that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fascinating game, that is. It's so weird. It's like a depression simulator.
Oh, brilliant.
That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like playing the game.
I get enough of that at work, thanks very much.
Right. It shouldn't work. The game shouldn't work, but it's so compelling. I would never let's play it because it's not the kind of game you can let's play. The audience would be bored stupid. They would be bored rigid because 90% of the time all you're doing is trying to balance Norman Reedus with the analog sticks as he's trying to make his way across rocks and rivers with these packs of stuff on his back. That's it. That is almost 90% of the game, and yet somehow it works. It is absolutely compelling. You will find yourself playing that game for hours and hours and hours with nothing happening around you.
Brilliant.
It's an amazing piece of work. It's like the anti-game. It's so strange, and yet it works. I mean, it's a totally Hideo Kojima style project, because he is a weird guy. He's got a strange,
He's the guy you don't leave with your children, basically,
exactly.
Or your goldfish.
Or anything, quite frankly. He's got the weirdest imagination imaginable, and he comes at video games at this sort of like weird, abstruse angle where it's like, no, it's not going to be like this. It's not going to be what you think it's going to be. It's going to be something that's going to completely redefine what you think a game is.
Well, then again, that's not necessarily a bad thing because studios, as we talked about earlier, have become very, very complacent with their IPs.
Oh, it's absolutely true.
And will churn out just the absolute bare minimum because they know they're guaranteed a return on it because of a loyal, if maybe disenfranchised fan base.
Yep, it's absolutely true. I mean, what you're going to see from now on, don't you? Because Elden Ring has dropped and has become one of the biggest selling games in history, one of the most successful games in all of history, you're going to see a slew of like emulations and rip-offs and whatnot that just miss the point of what makes Elden Ring work.
Yeah,
it's all going to be fantasy open world games now. Yeah, that's what it's going to be.
Every franchise. I mean, look at GTA. GTA spawned so many different carjack sort of or car racing with an element of this. Driver 3, for example, tried. It was a Driver 2 where you could get out of the car, but Driver 3 was more guilty of it, where they were trying to incorporate more of a your character can take any car, he can go anywhere, he can do anything, blah, blah, but the mechanics behind it didn't work for one thing.
No, certainly not.
The story behind it was slightly less than piss weak.
Have you seen any of the documentaries about Driver 3?
Yes, there's a channel on YouTube called Gamers, who has a guy who does the narration who sounds a little bit like depressed Robert Stack.
It's
some of those ones are fascinating.
It is. I mean, like, I would never normally pay that much attention to a game like Driver, but I love the story behind it. It's so compelling.
I've still got the original one on PS1.
Oh my god! Because the original Drive is good, isn't it? It's a good game.
It is, but if you could somehow work out how to get past the initial opening tutorial, because I had that game for a very, very long time before I somehow, by pure fucking accident, managed to do it. Because it doesn't tell you. It gives you a checklist of a stunt driving that you have to do, but it doesn't tell you specifically what it is. And there's one of them that you go, well, what the fuck's that then?
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
And if you don't do it in a certain time, you can't progress actually into the game until you completed this tutorial. That's why it put a lot of people off it.
Right.
But essentially, it was the first game I ever played that had, if you think about the tech limitations at the time, you could record a certain amount of gameplay and you could create your own cinematic car chases.
Wow.
Camera angles changing and sort of things like that. It was...
Well, that's impressive for the time. That's really impressive.
For the time, yeah, but again, going back to about 96, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that is early, isn't it, for this kind of technology? The notion of like capturing video game footage was like, even like the video game TV shows back then struggled to capture the the video game footage.
Yeah, I remember one that used to be on Sky One called Games World.
I remember Games World. Yeah, I remember Games World very well.
Me and Dave went to London when we were very small, wee kids, and we were in the audience for one of those.
Oh my God, Jesus!
Yeah, but we got to watch the Monday one, which was the Eliminator.
That was the Eliminator, yes.
And then the Friday one, which was Play Against the Pros or whatever it was.
Yeah, Jesus God! Because it was like a different type of show every night, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was Madam Pixel's Cheap Parlour.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I remember that one.
Christ.
Where kids would write in with like, "Oh, Madam Pixel, can you please help me on Sonic 2?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that was basically the Sky One rival to Games Master with
Games Master. That's right.
Patrick Moore.
No, you're right. Patrick Moore and Dominic Diamond. Yeah.
Patrick Moore, who I thought actually by that stage was clinically dead.
They remade it, you know. Did you see the new Games Master?
Well, Patrick Moore?
No, it's Trevor McDonald. And it's pretty good. I've got to say, it's quite funny.
There is life after the fucking years of 10. Brilliant.
Yeah, Trevor McDonald's having a blast, actually. He's really enjoying it. He's clearly having a lot of fun with it.
Excellent.
I just like the idea of like them scouting around for these venerable old news broadcasters and academics. Oh, would you like to play a digitized avatar in a?
They asked Jon Snow and he said no. Richard Whiteley was already well fucking dead.
Oh yeah, well gone. I'm afraid they'd have had to have resurrected Whiteley, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
What I love about the new series of Games Master is that, you know how the original had this really like underground, like ropey feeling about it, which was really cool. They've gone for that.
I watched back a little bit of footage of the original Games Master not long back, and I felt really sorry because obviously they've superimposed this sort of strange cyberpunk Borg look on Patrick Moore's face, and he kind of looked a little bit like the Master from the first Fallout game.
Yes, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. He does, yeah.
I was like, oh fuck me, that looks awkward.
Yeah, it's just like I mean that at the time again, it's one of those weird things that's difficult to explain. But like the notion of a video game television show was so punk, wasn't it, at the time?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It didn't happen. It just didn't happen. So when Games Master hit, it was like really exciting.
Almost sort of acknowledging that perhaps that video games were actually a viable means of entertainment.
Yeah, because do you
never fully admit it? You know.
Again, I mean, do you recall like the incredible hostility from traditional media when video games were first making the scene?
Oh yes.
The bullshit that was on television about video games. I recall when I was very young watching this documentary on, I think it was on Channel 4 or something, about, yeah, that's what they call it, about how, I mean, looking back on it now, it was such bullshit. They were claiming that video games make kids violent. They were claiming that video games not actually can cause epileptic fits, but can cause epilepsy.
Right,
and it's like, no, they can't.
No, they can't. The only thing that can cause epilepsy is a predisposition towards epilepsy.
Exactly. It's like... But that kind of bullshit was everywhere back then. In news, like every other day, there was something in the right-wing tabloid, some moral panic about video games this, video games that, the great evil of video games.
Yeah. This boy played Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and then probably went to shoot up his school.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that. I mean, the big one, obviously, and I think I've spoken about it on this channel before with my my colleague Max Booth. Do you remember Night Trap?
And was that the FOV? Not FOV. The
FMV game, yeah.
The one that was touted as being like sort of. It was the one set in the house.
That's the one.
People. It was about as scary as a fucking fish pie.
Yeah, that's exactly the one. Yeah, where it basically
scantily clad women in like sort of a pink crop top. And they're all having a sleepover.
That's
and
it.
It was. Yeah, I remember watching that on a list on What Culture, and I looked at it and thought that if I'd have had this game on a PC when I was one, it would have bored the shit out of me.
Yeah, that was the worst thing about the game.
Because there's nothing tantalising or titillating about this. It looks like a badly shot episode of Married with Children.
Yeah, it was shite. It was absolute shite. But do you know why it's infamous? Why it like has this place in the echelons of video games?
Didn't they claim it was some fucking nutcase in America who tried getting games banned for like fucking 30 odd years? Was it some nutcase in America who claimed that it prompted people to go out and randomly kill people?
It was nutcases here, unfortunately. It was the right wing. Yeah, it was the right wing tabloids got a hold of it, and they for some reason for like about a month in this country, it was the great Satan for the right wing.
Was this how we ended up with?
Yep, the ESPA. Yeah.
Yeah,
that was Night Trap and Mortal Kombat. They came out the same year, and it was those two games which resulted. Can you get this? Night Trap was talked about in Parliament, and it's
that's right. Yeah.
Jesus fucking Christ! And you've got MPs they've not only never played Night Trap, they've never played a fucking video game. They would be like
children.
Like they were awed by the Sinclair Spectrum. That would be an advanced system for them.
It's like, You can't have your children playing Night Trap. They'll grow up to be Tory MPs.
Exactly, right? Making the most insane claims about this game, that it was a snuff game, that you were supposed to kill the girls in it. No, you're not. You're supposed to help them. You're supposed to save them. That's the whole point.
And this is the same sort of thing that the White House fucking brigade would jump on as well, isn't it?
Exactly that. As a result, you had the ESPA created, which was the advisory board that puts the advisory ratings on video games still to this day.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, regardless, that considering what video games are capable of nowadays, I think that was probably an inevitable move anyway.
Yes, it was.
However,
Night Trap.
To create it based off something so innocuous,
I know, right? You know the irony. The irony. Like about 10 years earlier, on the Commodore Amiga, which I had, by the way, when I was a kid, there was a company called Horrorsoft, and they, as their name suggests, they created horror games for the Amiga. And they were really crude because it's the Amiga. It's like on floppy disk, literally on floppy disk. But there was stuff in those video games. There were images in those video games that are a million times worse than anything you would see, anything you would ever see in Night Trap. Waxworks, the game Waxworks on the Amiga, has some of the most gory, grotesque death animations I've seen in a video game, full stop, ever. Brilliant. But because nobody knew about video games back then, because they were this sort of like mysterious medium, and nobody, even in newspapers or in Parliament, were even aware of their existence, these things just sailed completely under the radar, and there were no ratings on them. And if a kid bought them, and that was the end of it. That was just the way.
Yeah, that's right. Sanctimonious kind of talk about things they know nothing about. That hasn't changed in the last 30 odd years.
It's got worse. In the UK, that's got
much worse.
In the UK, that is basically the standard.
But see, the problem is you can spot it for what it is now. Whereas I guess back then, unless you were sort of like you had half a brain cell, which I guess it wouldn't really cross people's minds. But you can identify sanctimonious bullshit now so much easier because it comes at you from every single direction.
From every direction, and also there's just so much of it. I mean, that's part of the problem.
It doesn't change anything.
We've started to realise, these daytime chat and discussion shows. Well, why do the hosts of those shows have their platforms to give opinions on things they know nothing fucking about? You
mean like the good old St. Piers?
Exactly, like Piers Morgan, like Philip Schofield, like all the rest of them. These people aren't experts on anything. They've got no legitimate platform to talk about fucking anything.
Well, can you imagine if the technology had been there, if Resident Evil had come out around the time of Night Trap?
Oh my god.
Fucking Mortal Kombat. We'd have never been allowed near fucking computer entertainment ever again.
No, that would have been like... That would have...
Instant ban.
Yeah.
Forget your Resident Evil 2 fucking sequels, and forget this, and forget that. It would have shut the whole thing down.
Well, that's another thing.
Country.
That is another thing that Resident Evil is noteworthy for. It dragged video game culture kicking and screaming into an adolescent phase, right? Where there was nothing they could do about it. Resident Evil was so popular, and it was phenomenally popular, Resident Evil. The fact that the franchise is sustained to this day through all of its trials and tribulations demonstrates how popular. The fact that we're here talking about it now, with such affection, the experience
30 odd years later.
30 odd years later, exactly, with such incredible affection for it, demonstrates what it was. It was a cultural phenomenon. It changed the nature of video games, as a lot of games on the PS1 did. I mean, you had things like Tomb Raider, for example, which, did change the nature of video games significantly.
Yeah, I mean, before that, I think, before my PS1, I had a Mega Drive.
Yeah, likewise.
And I think the closest I came to a horror game on the Mega Drive was probably Flashback.
Oh, that is such a cool game.
And to this day, I will die on this hill, right? The animations in that game for how Conrad runs, jumps, crouches, rolls, everything like that is possibly some of the most fluid animation I've ever seen on the
Yeah, it was
Ever.
mocap. It was a very old form of mocap that they used. It was a guy called Eric Chahi who made Flashback. He was the guy who made Another World, which was like
it was the sequel to Another World, wasn't it?
it's it's the spiritual sequel, you know.
And then they proper went ahead and fucked that one with a pitchfork with Fade to Black.
Fade to Black, which
on
was
the PS1.
garbage.
I turned off after 10 minutes.
Hot garbage. Flashback. I remember playing that with my friend. We were obsessed with it because he had it on his Mega Drive, and we were obsessed with it. Again, it's one of the very few video games from that era that actually had a story, for one thing.
Yeah, but the part that used to piss me off was trying to do everything you need to do to get a visa to go.
The jobs gotta do. Oh my god!
I must have wasted what felt like one of my lifetimes doing that.
That is one of the big bits of the game. That's right smack bang in the middle, isn't it?
Yeah, but fuck me if it wasn't one of the most engaging games ever. Because the other games I had was like sort of Road Rash 1, 2, and 3, Jungle Strike.
The more arcade.
If I wanted to blow up any like sort of Middle Eastern people, there was that and Desert Strike.
Yes.
And apart from that, Rock and Roll Racing that I used to play with Dave religiously. The best game I ever played on the Mega Drive, weirdly enough, was an American version of Star Trek: The Next Generation, which was that you needed a converter to play with because it was for the Genesis. And I borrowed that off Dave, and it was one of the most craziest fucking in-depth fucking things that I've ever played. The amount of things you had to do because you controlled the whole bridge.
Right.
You could go into the library computer. You could set destinations.
So it was like a simulator almost.
It was a whole game, but you had to move the cursor around to go around the different elements of the bridge. So if you want to set course for a planet, you have to go through about 5 or 6 different options on the helm just to set course for one particular planet because there was so many fucking options on it. It was crazy.
Mike, I loved my Mega Drive. I had Echo the Dolphin. Do you remember that?
Oh, Echo the Dolphin. Yeah, I remember that.
I don't know. I mean, I've watched Let's Plays of it since. I don't know how, but when I was a kid, I finished that.
Wow!
And
Congratulations.
I'm like, watching it now, I'm like, how? How did anyone finish that game? The only thing I can think of is that because, like, when you're like 8 years old, you've got nothing else to focus on. You've got no concerns like distracting from your energy, so you hyper focus on this one thing. I remember I would spend Sundays. I don't know why, it was always a Sunday, and it would take me all fucking Sunday. I would start it at like 8 o'clock in the morning and finish it at like 9 o'clock at night, but I would fucking finish it.
I remember, Echo came out about a time when it was trying to be quite an environmentally friendly.
Kind of, yeah.
So control the dolphin, and the dolphin goes off and does this, blah, blah, blah. And it was a beautiful looking game, especially for the tech it was running on at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But I'll be perfectly honest with you, well done for completing that game, because I was sitting there thinking, it's a shame you can't drown a dolphin.
Yeah, it's very unusual. The controls are really weird.
Dolphin.
Yeah, they're really weird. It's such an. I mean, I was thinking about it recently because I rewatched like a Let's Play of it, and I was like, it is really weird. There is nothing like there was nothing like this video game at the time. It didn't belong to any of like the genres or the categories, so it wasn't like a shoot 'em up or a beat 'em up or an RPG or anything like that.
The closest you could get to is probably side-scrolling platformer to a degree.
Kind of, yeah, and mixed with puzzle game and also with RPG because it did have a story. It was all about his missing pod. Where did they go? What happened to them? Because at the beginning of the game, you're there with your pod and you're sort of swimming around, and if you jump up really high out of the water, this vortex comes and sucks them up into the sky. And they did
a sequel to it that wasn't very well received.
Tides of Time, yeah, Tides of Time. That was right towards the end of the Mega Drive's life, like right towards the end. So it pushes the Mega Drive to the nth degree. That is a gorgeous looking game. It's really beautiful. I finished that one as well.
Do you remember there was a fighting game that came out towards the end of the Mega Drive's sort of run, sort of, where they rebranded the Mega Drive logo, so it was like a metallic blue.
Yeah, I remember that.
Along the side before you get to spine. There was a game that came out that everyone was really hyping and said this is going to be it was called Rise of the Robots. It was
yeah, I remember Rise of the Robots.
It was supposed to be like a Street Fighter 2 clone, but the graphics were going to be like sort of hyper realistic, like on a fucking 16-bit machine, yeah. And everybody was hyped. It was coming out in all the magazines. This new game's coming up, blah, blah, and it
sucked.
It bombed harder than the biggest bomb to ever bomb.
I remember that. I remember like the hype surrounding it. I remember like everybody wanted it. Like it was everywhere because it looked so advanced. It looked so interesting.
In the space of one weekend, it's slightly fucking forgotten about.
When everyone actually played the fucker.
Yeah.
You know, it was a bad game and remains one of the greatest flops in like video game history. Rise of the Robots. Infamous for being like one of the biggest flops ever and one of the most overhyped flops.
Yeah, because I remember renting it out of my local video store and I took it back the same afternoon.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised. Sorry, mate, can I exchange this for a game I can actually enjoy? Bless them, they did.
Yeah, and you know the worst of it, not that long later, you got things like Killer Instinct on the SNES, you know, and it's like, whoa, that genuinely, wow.
Yeah, and what's it? Tekken on the PlayStation or something.
Of course,
something like that. But yeah, I went back and I played my like sort of back then my Street Fighter 2.
Yeah,
and I remember when Street Fighter 2 came out. It was supposed to be the most advanced Mega Drive cartridge at that point. That fucking game cost me 60 quid.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It was expensive on the Mega Drive. It was. And also, to play it properly, you had to get another joypad as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
Because you had to have the 6-button joypad to play it properly.
Yeah, or what you do is every time you want to go from kick, you have to press the start button.
What a ball ache! What a complete.
Was it start button or select button? You had to hit one of them.
That's right. To switch from the buttons being punch and kick. What complete garbage! What nonsense, right? Which is a shame because like the Mega Drive version was the turbo version, wasn't it? So it was much more interesting.
Yeah,
you know,
it had two versions of the game on it. It had the Championship Edition and it had the Turbo Edition, which So actually, to be able to do that on the car, but I still don't. 60 fucking quid is 60 quid, and I can't believe I had to fucking spend 60 quid on that game.
I was gonna say, Jesus, I mean, even now that's expensive for a video game, isn't it? 60 quid. Yeah. That is a lot of money.
You're going back to like what 1989, 1990 there?
Jeez, God, yeah, that's a lot of money, isn't it? that's a lot of money.
I got the original Nintendo Game Boy back in '92.
Yeah.
I got birthday money. That fucker cost me 70.
I was gonna say, so only 10 quid more for like a whole system.
Yeah. Jen has still got a Game Boy in its box that she's never used.
Oh, Jesus.
Up on the shelf.
It's a lovely little system, the Game Boy.
If you sold that now, I said you'd get fucking sort of 200 quid for that. It's immaculate.
Yeah, you would. If it's boxed and it's new, yeah, absolutely, maybe more, you know?
It's been taken out of the box, it's been had on that, but I don't think it's ever really been used.
Wow, that's very cool.
Pretty fucking brand new, yeah.
Yeah, I love the Game Boy. I used to have a Game Boy when I was a kid, and my mum hogged it because she liked Tetris.
Yeah, mum liked Tetris, yeah.
Yeah, it's the mum's game, isn't it? You know, not to stereotype.
Totally. Like to shut her up. I had... Mega Drive, there's 3 games in one. I think there was Italia 90, some fucking biking game which was trash, and Columns.
Columns, yeah.
She loved a bit of Columns, did Mum.
Columns is brilliant. It's a lovely puzzle game, that one. It never took off like Tetris did.
No.
For some reason, even though it's a really good, fun game.
No, but it was infinitely more pleasant to fucking listen to, though. Even though it also had a jingly, jangly, fucking cheeky, chappy soundtrack as well.
As they all do.
As they all do. It was far more enjoyable to listen to that than fucking Tetris.
Yeah, which would speed up as the levels went, of course, to get faster and faster and faster.
All the different things you could get for it. You could get a magnifying glass, a light, a fucking printer that would print out a fucking...
Yeah, you could get stereo like speakers that plugged into it that slotted on the top. You could get. Yeah, I had the light. I had the backlight because it didn't have a backlight of its own, of course. So you could get like this light system that plugged onto the top and shone a light onto it.
Yeah, I think I had that and the magnifying glass, and it was awkward as fuck back then. I remember that.
I remember that. Jesus, I remember. Did you ever link it up with another Game Boy to play 2-player on something?
No.
That was fun. That was really exciting.
As much as I enjoyed my Game Boy, 1-player was a bit testing at times.
I used to play like Tetris against my cousin, you know.
For 2 players, like back and forth.
Yeah. Brilliant. It was great fun. But you had this like wire that like a lead that you slotted between the Game Boys. And that's how you played 2-player.
Oh, absolutely fantastic.
Oh, brilliant stuff.
But
did you play Resi 8 at all?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Well,
no, I've watched a playthrough of it.
Yeah, I loved Resi 8. I've got to say, it's different. It's like what they've done. It's like it rhymes with or echoes Resi 4. It's got a very Resi 4 feeling about it.
There is a massive throwback to like the initial village.
Definitely.
Opening section. I saw that. I noticed that when you're doing a playthrough. I thought a lot of this scenery looks familiar. It's not. It's all new rendered that, but it followed very, very particular tropes. At least up to that point, before you get to the castle.
Yeah.
What I particularly loved about Resident Evil 8 was how can I put this? The overactive imaginations of nerds who have never known the touch of another human being.
Yes. Lady Dimitrescu, yeah?
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
The 9-foot tall step on me queen, yeah?
She is a very striking woman. In fact, with a little bit of CG manipulation, I thought to myself, I would love to see, someone like Sigourney Weaver take this role. And that was my own personal take from that.
Capcom claim they didn't know when they put...
Really?
I mean... You know what the funny thing is? She's not even that significant in the game. She's the first big boss.
Their entire marketing campaign around this 8.5 foot tall. Chris McFeely must have fucking passed out, right?
Yeah, I bet. Bloody hell. She is beautiful. I mean, she's
stunning.
Is amazing. And she moves gorgeously in the game. Like, she's compelling.
Yeah, she's got that swagger, that sort of... her overall, sort of character design, like the clothing she wears is almost like sort of 1920s to like sort of 30s stuff. The makeup, the hair is very evocative of that time period, and they based all of their marketing and all the like sort of coming soon to PlayStation 4 and Xbox fucking whatever, Resident Evil 8, and every single element you saw, she was in there to some degree, and Capcom didn't know.
Yeah, I know, right? They claim they didn't know. I know, right?
Right.
But I do love the internet's reaction to it. I love the fact that they took this character like to their hearts. You know that this is the thing. I think it's brilliant. It's so funny.
And and she doesn't even really get out of the first third of the game.
No,
really.
She's like the big boss of the first quarter of the game. Yeah, that's it. And then when she's done, she's done. That's it. That's the end. And
that's what I love. That's what I love about it, because you can't turn around, hand on your heart, and turn around and say, we didn't realise that she was going to have such a massively instant appeal with a certain demographic of gamers, the ones who have never called out their fucking bedrooms ever. They've not seen daylight in 10 years. Right? We didn't realise that she was going to be so popular with them. I think you knew exactly what you were fucking doing from the outset with that one.
You did.
I found the daughters to be far more intriguing.
Oh, the daughters are very frightening. They're more frightening than Dimitrescu, definitely.
I remember going to a few sort of goth clubs in my 18 and 19 sort of years and dancing with girls who looked not too dissimilar from that.
Not too distinct, yeah.
You frighten me. But I'm strangely okay with that. Is what I took away from those days, you know.
You know what I loved in Resi 8? The running joke of like Ethan's hands getting mutilated.
Yes.
Every 2 fucking seconds. The first thing that happens to Ethan, like his hand gets half bitten off by a werewolf.
That's
And
right,
throughout the game, he's got this like stumpy, bleeding, bound up hand. Lady Dimitrescu, like the daughters hook him through the hands, through the palms, and string him up. And he's got a
cut off one of his arm,
it's
at the
so
wrist with a
it's so funny that because you do not expect it. It comes out of nowhere, and it is a genuine shock when it happens.
I tell you what fits into place very nicely. It sort of came as a bit of a shock to me is when the penny drops and you find out what actually his character arc is. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who might not have played the game or not seen the playthrough. But when you actually find out what this whole game's been building up to, what revelation there is, and it occurred to me, of course.
Yep.
That's exactly. Of course, that's what it is.
It's the joke from Resi 7, isn't it? Everybody was saying, you know what? He survived so much. How is that possible? He's healed from so much. Like, well, we know now. I wonder, is it the kind of thing where Capcom always had this in mind for Ethan, or was it they actually paid attention to the feedback from Resi 7 and said, you know what, we could actually work this into the story.
I wonder if it doesn't lean slightly more into the latter on that one, because
I'm thinking it's more the latter. I think
it works. It really works. And
but I mean, Resi, as much as I love the stories of Resi, they are not like profound emotional tales, are they? You know, they're fun, they're silly. This one, I had a genuine lump in my throat at the end. You know, I did. Like the stuff that Ethan has gone through, and all the symbolism. I can't believe I'm saying this about a Resi game, but the symbolism, the recurrent symbolism in 7 and 8 with the dynamics between families, fathers and daughters. You know, that's all the way through. Like Miranda and Ethan are counterposed to one another as the parental figures warring for the soul of this child. It's really cool.
You wouldn't expect Resident Evil to go quite that deep, would you?
I would have thought it would go even an inch of that depth. Quite frankly,
that's far more Silent Hill territory, and I think that's probably why Resident Evil 7 and 8 did as well as they did, because they're plugging a gap there. One for Resident Evil enthusiasts who have been waiting for a return to form, but they're also plugging a gap that Silent Hill isn't filling.
Oh, I think it's
fucks.
Yeah, what happened with 7 is, I am fairly certain but people at Capcom were like, okay, there's a gap to fill here. PT, even being like just the limited thing that it was a phenomenon.
Well, yeah, because all of a sudden Resident Evil goes fucking first person.
Exactly, and suddenly it's introducing all of the psychological horror that's in a Silent Hill game. So that's what they did, and it works. I mean, I'm surprised. I mean, when I first started playing Resi 7, I just assumed that it was it was Resident Evil, but it was like a reboot. It was a new mythology, you know. It wasn't anything to do with the original games, but actually, as we find out at the very end, it's in the same continuity. Yeah,
but this is now its second reboot. Still within an established universe in there.
Yeah, so everything that went before, all the stuff with Umbrella, all the stuff with Raccoon City getting nuked, all of that happened.
Yeah, and it comes so the first, I call it the first trilogy, is like sort of your fixed camera angles, tank control, sort of blah blah blah, very campy, sort of like kooky sort of thing.
I suppose you could call it the Raccoon City arc, couldn't you?
Yeah, and then 4, 5, and 6, because you do sadly have to lump them together, is the over the shoulder sort of macho fucking fist pumping, boulder punching, fucking curtain fucking in your eye sort of trilogy.
Yeah, it's the sort of action horror trilogy, isn't it? Where it's verging on Call of Duty, you know?
Taking itself far more seriously than it had any rights ever fucking try.
Oh, absolutely.
And then I think this 7, 8, and 9 is going to be the more sort of
the down-to-earth,
psychological, cerebral sort of first-person sort of. You are that character.
I can't believe that you use the term cerebral in a reference to a Resident Evil.
No, I know, but it seems like it's going that way because
it's true.
You're not looking at the character. You are the character.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I mean,
this is your
massive.
experience. You're not playing the character. This is your experience as
it's a more narrative experience, isn't it? That's what I found. Certainly, like the story arc of Ethan in Resi 7 and 8, it's much more narrative. It's much more about the characters, and that is really interesting. I mean, all of the big monsters in Resi 8, for example, the 4 scions of the village, they're all characters. They're all really distinct, and they have their own agendas and motivations. I mean, I remember getting like my heart just dropping. You know, when you kill Lady Dimitrescu's daughters, and you hear her shrieking, "What have you done to my daughters?"
Yeah,
and you're like, "Oh shit."
She's not happy.
Oh shit! What have I done? You know, I loved that. I thought that was amazing.
The fact that you're not necessarily safe anywhere in the castle either. The way that she can follow you to certain points. I mean, I was watching that thing where she's coming through that main that big hallway, and okay, so I need to run back into the Duke's still thing there because she can't get me in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just
and must have done that about 5 or 6 times in that one video.
Yeah, I know, right?
So you've got to hope that 9 isn't going to follow the tropes of the first 2, where the third entry in that particular trilogy is the one that fucks it, and therefore is the one that prompts another reboot.
Yeah, that would be frustrating, especially with what they've set up. I mean, you know, spoilers, guys. I'm going to assume that you know what we're talking about here. But the end of Resi 8 seems to suggest that we're going to be playing as Rose next.
Yeah.
So for the first time, rather than being the victims of the bioweapons or being the ones who are hunting the bioweapons, we're going to play the bioweapon.
Yeah. That opens up a whole new fucking load of opportunities.
I love the idea. I love the idea. I mean, Rose is potentially phenomenally powerful. I mean, she is what's her name from the original, from Resi 7, the girl reborn, isn't she? Evelyn. She's Evelyn reborn, you know? So she controls the Mutamycetes. You know, she is almost like a goddess, you know, potentially.
Yeah.
There's a lot that they could do. Introducing like bio powers, you know, and stuff like that.
Something a little bit like along the lines of what BioShock did.
Yeah, very much so. They have to be
very, very careful. If they're going to do it, they need to take the time. If it ends up, sorry, we're going to have to delay the game by 6 months, then fucking delay the game by 6 months. Don't rush this. Don't fuck it.
It's fine, you know. They took their time with Resi 8. They took their time with Resi 7. I've got more of all the big companies, the big video game companies out there. I've got a fair bit of faith invested in Capcom at the moment.
Yeah, it'd be such a shame for them to fucking spend all that in one fell swoop.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to do. It's happened before with video game companies. I mean, Bethesda, after Skyrim, they had like you know, Scrooge McDuck's hoard worth of benefit.
Do you know what? I've still not played that.
What, Skyrim?
Yeah.
Skyrim is fine.
Do you know why? Because I had the fucking PS3 version.
And
the PS3 version was notorious for basically being
broken,
unplayable.
Unfinished mess. Yeah. Yeah, that ain't gonna work.
So I watched one of the documentaries on the rise and fall of Bethesda, or the rise and fall of like sort of Skyrim, and it got to the subject about Skyrim on PS3, and I went, "That's why."
Yeah,
I couldn't get past the first 15 minutes of the game because the game was basically programmed not to let me.
At the time, if you got like the 360 version, which I got, it was quite impressive. You know, it was buggy and it was unfinished, but it was still quite impressive. But you know what? Since that time, going back and playing it now, you realize again what a lazy piece of shit it is. Why, you know, there's no story.
Controversial take there, George.
It kind of is. It is. I mean, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it at the time, but it is lazy. There is no getting around it. It is lazy. The main story is dog shit. There's nothing there. I
still enjoy Fallout 3. Do you know what?
Me too.
But going back and playing Fallout 3 quite recently, just to test that my PS3 actually still fucking worked, I thought to myself, oh, it's that strangely brown colour palette again.
Yeah. Fallout 3 is fine. I enjoyed Fallout 3, absolutely. New Vegas I enjoyed more. New Vegas I thought was spectacular, but then that wasn't Bethesda, that was Obsidian.
Yeah. True.
And Obsidian make good open world games.
So they the ones who did the Outer Worlds?
They were, and they've said consistently in interviews, because it came out about the same time as Fallout 76, and they've said consistently, "Oh no, we weren't trying to show up Bethesda or anything. You fucking were."
Well,
lying shits. There are things in the game where they are directly parodying Fallout. They are directly parodying Bethesda's Fallout games.
Well, they say revenge is the dish best served cold, and I wonder if that hasn't got something to do with how badly Bethesda shafted them on New Vegas' return. Because wasn't they supposed to get a bonus if it hit 85% and they hit 84?
That's right.
Or something like that, and
That's right.
So
they completely
take your kicks wherever you can get them. Quite frankly,
not only did they shaft them, but they gave them. I think Fallout. I can't believe it, but Fallout New Vegas was produced in the shortest time frame imaginable.
Like 12, 18 months. Or less than that?
It's less than that. They gave them next to no time to produce this game, and they came out with the best Fallout game, unambiguously the best Fallout game, and they shafted them on it.
Yeah. So
and the Outer Worlds does just completely shat on the Fallout games from on high. It takes everything that they do well, does away with all of the bad stuff, and then does it a million times better. It's a fantastic game, the Outer Worlds. It is a fantastic. It's not just an open world game; it's an open universe game.
I might have to look into that at some point. Depends how much space I got on my system.
It's really good. I've done half a Let's Play of it. I haven't finished it yet. I've got to go back to it. But the first video, one of the first things you hear me doing is laughing my arse off. Right. Because it is so funny. It's got a really wry, gallows sense of humor about it.
Oh, jolly good.
And it's really good. It's a stunner of a game. I loved the Outer Worlds. I absolutely loved it. And again, it's Obsidian doing what Obsidian do well, showing up Bethesda.
That's the whole reason for their being.
It's the whole reason for their existence.
I don't think Bethesda need any fucking help with that. Actually, I think they've managed to fucking fuck themselves quite well on their own.
Well, it's a rare thing for the scandals of one company to launch an entire subcategory of YouTube videos. But that's what happened. That's what happened with Fallout 76. There are entire channels,
and they're still going.
Yeah, well,
if you think about the controversy that surrounded was it Blizzard? Following their dubious office practices
and ongoing, by the way.
And really, and ongoing.
Oh yeah, there's loads of new scandals coming out recently.
The stuff that surrounds EA, every time they buy up a studio, they quickly dissolve the studio, absorb the IP, and sit on it like fucking vultures. It's all these different, and yet nothing of consequence or note ever happens to these companies.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, the most of consequence. The big problem is, of course, it's the fact that they are ruled by billionaire CEOs, and the most that ever happens is a fine. A billionaire CEO, a fine is nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
Nothing. No fine any court can impose is going to mean jack shit to them.
Maybe that should have been the ultimate. Maybe the next Resident Evil game should be set in a game developer studio.
Huh.
And it could be just a very, very subtle play on words. The game only has to take about half an hour to complete, and you have to go around the office and basically either get yourself or get out the so many controversies or anything like that, whilst taking down the CEO that just happens to also maybe have been on the board of Umbrella.
That would be a fantastic game, actually. Navigating the various scandals and things that are going on in a video game company. Yeah. And the only reason any of this has come to light is because of YouTube investigators, of course.
Yeah.
That's the only reason. Kudos on them. Kudos for doing it. Because there was a time when the culture of video game reporting was just so corrupt, when it was largely just the magazines doing it.
Yeah.
It was so corrupt. You actually had video game companies paying magazines to just give the game above 70%, all right?
Ooh.
Even if you hate
PlayStation magazine or talking about more the independent magazines fucking hell, whatever they were called.
So many of them. That happened with so many of them. It's unreal. It's absolutely unreal.
Wow. I had no idea about that, but then again,
yeah.
that doesn't really surprise me, because I can probably imagine at some stage in my life I probably have picked up a game years and years and years ago, based off a glowing recommendation in a magazine, only to find out that game was fucking
was pants,
had less substance than dog shit.
Yeah, there were several magazines that gave Rise of the Robots like 90%.
Well, there we are. We've solved that mystery then, haven't we?
It's like, well, the only reason you would ever do that is if you were being paid to say it, right?
Yeah.
And you had no integrity at all, because it was unambiguously a terrible game.
Yeah. It really was.
It's not even a matter of opinion. It is objectively true, right?
Yeah.
It was a broken game.
That's a conversation for another time. Games from way back when, which actually we were told were brilliant, but which weren't very good at all.
Complete garbage. There's a lot of them.
I will have to do some research, see if I can remember what I played and what I didn't. Incidentally, I did I should go back and do them again at some point. I did a top 10 video a little while ago about what my top 10 Mega Drive games were.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's on my channel somewhere, and I was going to do a whole series of it. I've basically got loads of gaming footage that I've swiped off YouTube that I'm going to have to like sort of credit the individual channels for.
Yeah.
But I basically drafted a top 10 of the games from the Mega Drive that I've done. I've got a list prepared for like PlayStation 1, 2, 3, and 4 era.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, so it's sort of reminded me. I want to get back into maybe doing those.
Oh, I might make that idea if you don't mind.
Top 10 of games from a subsequent PS4 or whatever eras that were absolutely fucking rotten to the core.
Just dog shit, yeah. Interesting. I might nick that idea if that's okay, Jay. I'd love to do it. I would
perhaps a collaboration at some point.
Yeah, that'd be grand. I mean,
I'll sit here and do the editing. You're right. I'm quite fucking good at that.
No, I'm up for that. Definitely. We could like alternate. Like you give your top 10 and I give mine, so what's your number 10 and that would be fun. That'd be really interesting, actually, because there are a lot of top 10 videos on YouTube, so the alternating thing would be a really nice way of differentiating it.
Yeah, so it's the same as the conversation is here, and I'll just cut it together.
Yeah, I love it.
Maybe like sort of 10 to 6 and then 5 to 1, like 2 separate videos or whatever, so it doesn't go on for 100 years.
No, I love that idea. I think that's a brilliant one. And we could go through, like you said, go through the systems, I mean, did you have a Super Nintendo at all when you were...
No, I started off on an Amstrad CPC 464.
Oh, God.
Yeah. From there, I went to the Master System, but I only had the one game built into that, which was
Alex Kidd. Yeah.
Then from Mega Drive, I then went to PS1, and then PS2, PS3, PS4. Yeah. So
for me, I think I started with the Amiga, and then it was the Mega Drive, the Super Nintendo, then it was PlayStation. So,
yeah, I didn't bother with the Super Nintendo because I realised that a lot of the games that I played on the Mega Drive were available on the Super Nintendo. A lot of them were, definitely. I mean, the only reason really to get a Super Nintendo was the unique games, like the franchise games. Yeah. But they were good. I mean, my God, that some of the games on that system are bloody amazing. I mean, Super Metroid, it's one of the best games ever made. It's just flat out one of the best games ever made. It's still good. It still plays like a motherfucker, that game. It's beautiful. Yes, I think that'd be a wonderful idea.
Yeah, I'm totally up for that. I think that would be great fun. Yeah. Cool. Okie dokes. Well, I think with that, shall we draw this one to a close?
I think that's a
brilliant
idea.
Brilliant. Thanks once again. It's it's always a blast. Always a blast. Before we go, is there anything that you'd like to pimp out here?
Yeah, I've got Series 3 of 7 Days to Die running on my channel at the moment, which comes out weekly. Don't ask me how many episodes I've uploaded already. But we're on episode 8 of that at the moment. Episode 9 comes out on Friday. I've still got my Poxy Transformer reviews that I do on a weekly basis.
They're great fun. They're not Poxy. They're great. You're doing the Pretenders.
There were days, George, where I just sit there and go, why am I still doing this?
You are doing the Pretenders, and they're so shit. They're so compellingly shit. I love it. I love it to bits.
I'm going to do Bugly for you at some point in the next couple
thank you. It's so sad, isn't it? Because like the Decepticon Pretender shows like Bugly are great.
Yeah.
They're really cool, aren't they?
Once I've got through all of the main Autobot ones, all the main Decepticon ones. I'm going to do another video where I'm going to compare them all together on my little display thing and go, take a look at this, ladies and gentlemen, and you decide.
Yeah, right. I mean, and it's unambiguous, isn't it? The Decepticon ones are just better, right?
Yeah, just absolutely better. Coming up to my channel, I was trying to do a Transformers comic thing with pictures now.
Oh, yes!
And I'm thinking I might have to abandon that project because I cannot get the story right.
Oh.
I'm having real trouble with how I want the story structured, and I cannot get it right. So until I've sussed out what I'm doing with that, I'm shelving it.
Is it going into hiatus a little bit? You know, just put it aside and let it percolate.
For a long time. I've still got other things I want to do. Like I still want to do this talk radio thing.
Oh yes, God, yes.
I'm trying to get that finalised, but every time I try to get someone on board with it, it kind of falls through because they've got other things doing. I'm not going to feel like
I'm sorry because I know I was supposed to be on that. I'm so sorry about that. A lot of stuff has happened actually since.
Yeah, exactly. I cannot interfere with the natural progression of life, you know.
And it's opposite, it seems, because a lot of that has happened too.
But at some stage that's coming. I've got a whole bunch of other ideas that I haven't quite formulated in my head. So head on over to YouTube /Wolfkang1 for just inane bullshit, basically.
Links below.
There's no other way to describe what goes on my channel.
Links below, ladies and gents. Links below. As for me, same as usual. You can find me knocking about here on Exaggerated Elegy, where there's the video game Let's Plays, there's podcasts like this, and all of the other podcasts, by the way, which have been sort of shelved over the last couple of weeks or so, are coming back with a vengeance very soon. You can find links to my published work over at strangeplaygrounds.com. And also most recently at Perpetual Motion Machine Publications, my 2 short story collections, Born in Blood, the volume 1 and 2. And also you can find them over at the Evil Empire of Amazon if you fancy it. Just go and type in George Daniel Lee and you'll find my stuff. Until next time, guys, thank you for listening and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.